All right, so welcome to our first exercise coaching call. I mean, I would say we've had other calls where we talk about exercise and do some coaching, but kind of our first formal, we are going to be doing this weekly for a period of time. And the reason that we are doing these meetings, it kind of evolved out of over the past couple of months, we had meetings talking about exercise intensives because there was some research that I discussed as a research highlight, which we do on a monthly basis. And on those research highlights, I discussed a program that is available in Italy that they have done multiple research studies on showing that people benefited from an intensive exercise program where they were doing 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for a month. And I thought that was pretty cool. And there might be some people who want to try doing an intensive, whether it is with us here in person at Rogue. Some people have done that, whether it's an intensive that people do online with us from their home, whether they include some individual therapy. There's a lot of ways that that could be put together. So we had a couple calls talking about that. And then during especially the second call, I was getting a lot of questions, not just about doing an intensive, but how to get started and how to work through barriers like pain or Parkinson's symptoms. Um, Things like, if you do have freezing and how to exercise so that you get the most out of it. And it is not, we know in the research it says high intensity exercise is beneficial, but that's not always the best way to exercise. Sometimes you need to start where you're at and give yourself a period of time to work up to that higher intensity level so that your body has a chance to adjust physiologically to that increased demand. Sometimes you might have been doing one thing for a while and then you've had some time off for whatever reason. And you're not, most people would not be able to just jump back and do exactly what they were doing before. That is true for someone without Parkinson's. If you are training consistently for a period of time, you have certain capabilities. And then if you take time off, whether you trained and ran a race and then you stopped running because you weren't training for something anymore, then you're not just gonna be able to jump in and like run that race again. You're gonna have to train again. Unfortunately, exercise, there are lasting benefits, but the benefits we get go away if we stop exercising to some degree. Some of the benefits stay, but our fitness level and things change. So in that last call, we were just talking about a lot of things. And I was like, I think we do need, and we've actually thought about having exercise coaching calls like this for a long time, but we just never made it happen. We weren't really sure exactly what or how to do it. So at this point, I felt like it'd be great to have conversations on a weekly basis. And I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, and you all can let me know, do we want to have kind of some questions that we go through each time, like, or report in a win, because it's really important to focus on something that we are doing that we intend to do or something that is going well. So sometimes it's really helpful to share a win at the beginning of things like this, and then also maybe share a goal and then progress towards that goal. So, these meetings can be they are going to be informal, but if it's helpful for everyone, if we kind of do a check-in or let you each set a goal and then we check in each week on how that goal is going. And even if you haven't met the goal or even made progress towards it, sometimes you might say, well, I'm going to reevaluate this goal then. Is this really the goal that I want to be working towards? Or it's just an opportunity for some accountability and to say, I set this goal, I made no progress this week. And now it's time to recommit and see where I'm at. And now is this the week that I'm going to have the opportunity to get started working towards it? So first off, I'd like to just open it up for anyone to unmute, or you can put a message in the chat as well. But for these calls, would it be helpful for us to have a little bit more of that structure to it? Or do you guys just want to be able to kind of show up and ask questions and talk about things? Does anybody have any thoughts? All right. Well, I think that it would be helpful to have a little bit of structure. It's not going to be, structured for the whole hour, but I will think about it a bit. I think sharing a win is a good thing to do. And I think having a specific goal, and that goal can be a short term or smaller goal, or it could be a bigger goal that you're working towards. But it really does help us to have a goal that we're working towards. And then anytime if we kind of get off track or we're like, what am I doing what I intend to do? We can look at that goal again and see is what I'm doing working towards that goal. And then we'll check in about those goals. And that helps give us a bit of accountability that supports us in making progress. All right. Anyone have any thoughts or questions at this point in
Claire,
time? Mhm.
Please, thank you. So I have one question. And in the original study, it was the, like power moves first, and then it was the cardio, and then it was the occupational in the afternoon. Does it have to go in that order? Because
Mm-mm.
sometimes I find like it's just good for me to get out and do my cardio first and then come back and do power moves to kind of loosen up. Okay, that was
Yeah.
my first question.
And basically, I mean, we don't know for sure because it's really hard in research to look at all the different ways that something could happen and all the different parameters. So I can't really say that for sure. I don't have a research study that says that, yes, people did things in a different order and they benefited just as much. But I also don't actually think that in that research study that they necessarily did that order every single day, because realistically, for the way that they're scheduling their staff and scheduling people when they do an intensive, likely in reality, in many cases, that's going to be slightly adjusted. So yeah, I don't think that the order really matters unless you feel a difference. Like if getting your cardio first thing in the morning helps you feel better for the rest of the day and have more energy, or it's just important, if I don't get it done first thing in the morning, it just is less likely to happen later in the day because then I eat and it's like, well, when am I going to do it? Or I'm out and about. And if the high intensity exercise means I'm going to get sweaty, and I want to do that first thing in the morning and then shower and be clean for the rest of the day in the activities I do. So yeah, I think it's more just that those were the forms of exercise. And I think fitting those in whatever way works best in your schedule is, I really think would be totally fine based on my experience working with people. I also don't even think that you necessarily have to do 3 hours a day every day. But again, we don't have a study that said, well, what if people did 2 hours a day versus 3 hours? Like, how much of a difference is there? I think that for a lot of people, once they get over a certain threshold of exercise, they start experiencing benefit. But what exactly that threshold is it an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? It's hard to say. Um, if we took, okay, 15 hours in 5 days, what if someone did spread that out over 7 days because that was a little bit better for them? I really think that probably the same amount of exercise, but spread out could be beneficial as well, as opposed to actually taking 2 days off. So I think that the best way is to kind of look at it as an overall program that there were these types of exercise included. And the more similar you can do it to the study, the more likely you are to experience those benefits. But in reality, most people are probably not going to do it exactly like that study. And so in that case, you put together a program that works the best for you and you give it a period of time and see how you're feeling and if it's benefiting you. And if not, then you try a tweak from there. But 3 hours a day, I mean, I think a lot of people don't necessarily have 3 hours a day. And I think a lot of people could benefit from 2 hours a day. Or maybe it's on one day it's one, and some days it's two, and some days it's three. It's just people in their real lives, it's a little bit more variable. Some people might be able to say, okay, for this month, I am really going to dedicate my time and effort to this. And so they do commit to doing 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. But I think there are a lot of different ways that it can work.
Okay. And my next question is, I'd be curious to hear from others about what they've come up with for the occupational stuff. I spoke with my sister-in-law, who is an occupational therapist in Missouri, and she gave me some ideas mainly, but the problem was that she gave me like exercises to do that we're already doing in the videos, but adding on like a mental challenge to it, like, you know, um, counting backwards from, by sevens. I mean, that's hard enough for me to do without doing a physical challenge at the same time. But
Mm-hmm.
she said, like if you can combine those things to get your brain going, along with your body. But I'd just be curious if anybody else has come up with anything that's been working for them. And that's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. And I will share really quick if anybody wants to unmute and share. So, Leanne is an occupational therapist who has a company that does individual occupational and physical. They have physical therapists as well, and they work with people one on one through insurance. They are based here on site at Rogue. We share space with them. And I have asked Leanne to come on and join us for one of these exercise coaching calls so that we can, have an OT directly on the call. Um, and I think that she will be able to, and I can even before she's going to meet with us, I think it's a little bit later in the month is when she was available. It might be the 29th. So we have a few weeks before she's coming. I'll triple check that date, but I'm pretty sure it's Monday the 29th. In the meantime, I can certainly put together a list of, kind of OT type activities. And then you basically could go through the list and pick a certain number of them. So OT, in my experience, collaborating with OTs, in many cases, they're working on fine motor dexterity activities, which is something where you can gather a bunch of household things like nuts and bolts and paper clips and not paper clips, but what are like a clothes hanger, clothespin. There we go. Clothespin. Things where you're using your hands, opening and closing jars, opening, closing water bottles, like different sized things. So fine motor dexterity is one. And we do have a section in the video library called fine motor activities. And we have a few videos in there, not a ton, but we have a few. One talks about household and kitchen things, and some of it is to how to do this better. And in some cases, it's how to have a tool or something that helps do things easier. They have fine motor strengthening activities. I think there's a mobility and flexibility one. There's a handwriting one. Handwriting is a common thing that's worked on in OT. Dual tasking, like your sister-in-law was saying, is definitely one. And counting backwards by sevens, I agree, I think is really hard anyways. You could do different numbers. You could start with one and go forward and then backwards. And then you could do twos and go forward and backwards, threes, fives. You can start with ones that are a little bit more doable and then try to make it more challenging. You also can just pick categories. So while you're doing the power moves, you try to say as many names as you can. Maybe trying to go through the alphabet and, starting with a name that starts with A and then B and then C and then D. You can do categories like fruits and vegetables or animals or all these other things. So there's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate that cognitive challenge too. Then let's see. So fine motor, dual tasking, basically OT evaluates like, what does your whole day look like from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed? And are you able to do everything that you need to do during the day as easily and efficiently and as well as possible? So, dressing, bathing, preparing meals, taking medications. So that's kind of the occupation. Occupation doesn't just mean like your job. Occupation that is what our life is. Our life is our occupation. If you like to garden or if there's other, things that you like to do, then you kind of like evaluate throughout the day and see, for all the things that I need and want to be able to do throughout the day, am I able to do all those things as well and as easily as possible? And if not, then you identify what is the activity that is challenging, if possible, to figure out what is the barrier for that activity. In some cases, that might be hard to figure out on your own. And that's when working with a one-on-one is really helpful. Or coming on a call like this, we could certainly do kind of an activity analysis. You could say, it's taking me longer to get dressed and it's harder. And so we could kind of talk through like, what are some things that can really help with dressing? I talked about it once before, I think, that one of the things that often is happening in OT is trying to take the amplitude training that you practice in power moves and really helping you implement that into your daily life. So when you get dressed, to get dressed with more amplitude and effort and more deliberate movements. And when you're cooking in the kitchen or making things, to do that with more amplitude. When you're stepping and moving around the kitchen, take big steps. When you're reaching to the cupboard, really reach big. So that's one thing that we're often working on, is saying what we do in exercise isn't supposed to be just exercise. It's supposed to be how you then kind of move in your real life. But sometimes that doesn't happen automatically, and you kind of have to practice that transition. Visual exercises can be a part of occupational therapy. Mobility things like getting in and out of bed, moving around in bed, making our bed. We have to be able to pull and take all the sheets off and then wash and then put them all back on. So that's what they really do, is look at your whole day. So I will also ask Leanne if she has something that people kind of can use themselves to, keep track during a day. How is my day? Like, what are the activities that kind of slow me down or are more difficult or I avoid because they're challenging? And in some cases, we want to help make that activity better. In some cases, we want to figure out a workaround, like what can you do just to make it easier on you? So it maybe doesn't take as much time and you have more time and energy to do the other things that you do want to do. So I can ask if there's some sort of kind of activity analysis that would help you figure out what are the things I want to work on. And we can have a list where you could look through and see like if that helps you kind of identify things that you would like to work on. Yeah, so I think that would give us a good start. Oh, I know. The other thing I've mentioned is that I really think that OT can be like in the evening or afternoon, whenever you're making dinner, that that you make dinner from scratch. It's good for you. It's healthy to eat that kind of food and to do it with that intention and big movement. So taking what you do in an exercise class and putting that into real life is, kind of the point of physical therapy too. We want you to have good balance so that you can, get dressed easily and stand on one leg if you need to, or good flexibility so that it's easy to put your socks and shoes on. So that's what we exercise for, is to make your life better and easier. So then integrating exercise into daily life is part of how we make that happen. So great question, Kelly, and we will work on that. And then does anybody want to share does anyone have experience of working with an occupational therapist and what kind of things you addressed? Or does anybody feel like they know kind of some OT specific type things that they're incorporating into their exercise program? Linda, did you have any luck finding someone in your area?
Um, I have a list printed out. One of the things was sometimes some of the people only don't have offices and they only come to your home, um, which I understand is necessary in some cases. I'm a little less interested in that, but um, I did find someone who works with supposedly neuro, but I fear it might be a lot of strokes, so I haven't talked to her yet. Um, One thing I thought would be interesting to add on to OT stuff, although maybe it's not OT, but that could be part of our speech practice, especially when we do sort of face exercises. And I wondered about the smell kit, because I feel like sometimes my ability to smell actually comes and goes. So I know there's a smell training thing that could be, 5 minutes of it or 10 minutes of it that could be. But I'll probably really be most interested in handwriting. I know that the one time I saw somebody many, many, many moons ago, they really encouraged those children's lined paper and writing
Mm-hmm.
big over and over and over.
Wide ruled. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's some kind of like hand exercises you can do before you go to handwrite to really like stretch your hands out so that they are ready to do the task that you want to do. So yeah, there's a lot of ideas. So the list you have, I thought you were saying you had a list of OT activities, but the list is of actual OTs. And I would agree. I mean, outpatient is great, but sometimes in home is really great because that is where you are living your life. And so in some cases, you know, working in the environment where you're actually living your life is a very helpful thing for an OT to see and for you to experience and where to train. A lot of people report like when I'm out, at a gym or in a clinic or something, I do move differently already. Homes tend to be smaller and have more furniture. And so it's a little bit harder to move big in a home environment in many cases compared to a clinic that's like wide open spaces and much less furniture. So a lot of times we really want to make sure that if we do work on something in an outpatient setting, that we're making sure that it translates and makes sense for home. And OT also certainly could be, if you want to do an exercise program, do you have the space and setup to do the exercise you want to do? And like joining speech class online, that is, having a device and getting logged in and utilizing it. Like, part of OT is doing the things that benefit you in other ways. So I really think that speech class, a couple times a week to me would count as that third hour. If you've done whether it was you do kind of power moves and cardio and then speech, or maybe you do like cardio, OT focused activities and speech. As a physical therapist, like I would say getting, good practice kind of across what the different disciplines have to offer is better than just doing the physical exercise. So yeah, I really think speech class is really valuable for the vocal drills, following along, seeing how things feel, getting in tune with your body, working on speech and swallowing, which at one point in time, physical therapists even did evaluations for swallowing. And I think OTs at one point in time did as well. It wasn't just a speech thing at one point in time. So that covers multiple disciplines as well. And Carrie, I saw you unmuted. Do you have any experience with OT?
No, what I was going to say was that for my OT is being so dyskinesia is my biggest problem. And so my OT portion of my day is going to be just being very intentional about how I'm moving and being aware of the dyskinesia, not just letting it carry me along. and just try to, like I said, use intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's, you can't, I mean, you could maybe, but for most people, we cannot pay, attention, be intentional all day long. It takes
It's
a lot of
exhausting.
effort, yeah, to be intentional. So, doing good exercise for a period of time is great, but then, yeah, picking for a certain amount of time, and whether that is 1 hour or if it was like 2 30-minute blocks where you said, yeah, for this period of time, I am going to be really intentional with my movement. I'm going to make sure I'm breathing. I'm going to try to stay calm. I'm going to do these activities. And, I don't know that when it comes to dyskinesia, that trying to like control your dyskinesia always works. It sometimes might feel like if you try to control it, it comes out even stronger. But being more intentional with your movement, where, yeah, you're not just letting it carry you along, but you're kind of seeing like, are there things I could do that help minimize it? Like, what if I pause and breathe and let my nervous system calm down a little bit? Sometimes you might feel like, oh, I don't want to take the time to do that. But
That's
sometimes if you
it.
take a minute or two to calm your nervous system, then you can move much better after that. And then the more you do that, the more your system is going to be calm and the less dyskinesia there will be. So it's worth that. It's same thing with freezing too. Freezing is something that symptom of freezing is where someone's foot kind of gets stuck to the floor and it's difficult to take a step. And that can happen just with one step where there's kind of a hesitation, but once they get moving, they're able to walk. Or for some people, it's really severe and it's very difficult to take any steps and they get stuck, can be for periods of time. And in many cases, it's because the brain is like, go, 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 and the foot won't move. And then it's like, go, go. And there's like this internal battle between the feet not moving and the strong urge to get where you're trying to go. And unfortunately, that like exacerbates it and makes it worse. If the person, I mean, I would say like 90% of the time, if the person can say, okay, I'm not going to try to go anywhere, I'm going to take a deep breath, and then I'm going to slowly take one big step. In many cases, people have better control and they're able to get over the freezing, but to pause and take a breath and be more intentional with that first step is very difficult. So I think the same type of thing of calming the nervous system, taking a little bit of time to breathe before you go and move is something that works really well and is helpful for dyskinesia and also for freezing. That can be, very hard to do and very frustrating. All right. Anyone else have any questions about kind of putting together their program, whether you are going to try doing an intensive or if the first step is just to get going with consistent exercise or increase the frequency or the duration or, the number of things that you do in a day? We can talk about anything. So don't feel like you have to be doing an intensive to ask questions. It could be just getting started. Gay, have you tried getting on the treadmill? I'll hit the ask to unmute and then you should be able to click. There we go.
Okay, good. Not the treadmill, but my bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a stationary bike and I've done that a couple times. And I feel like a big baby because my hip hurts and I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always afraid I'm going to do too much. And I did send a little note. I'm highly motivated to feel better because my boy is getting married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'd like to be able to dance with him.
Mm-hmm. That is a great goal. And you have a year, you have time.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a great goal. So what have you tried on the bike so far? How long have you gone on the bike?
I did 30 minutes today. I did 20 because I was in more pain today. And I try to get up to the cardio level, but you had said, you can go the pace that works for you when you're rehabilitating. So I don't always go as fast.
Yeah. And you went so were you riding the bike prior to last week?
Not only a little bit. I really like the treadmill better. because when I'm right on my bike, I kind of forget what I'm doing and then I get slower. It takes more effort to really get that cardio up.
And have you been using the treadmill at all recently?
No, not much because then my hip really hurts. And this has been going on for about a year and a half, and I thought it would self-correct, but it didn't. And so last December, I got an X-ray, and I'm fine. I'm always fine.
Yeah,
And
well,
then,
an X-ray only shows some things, for
hmm,
one. But yeah, when it comes to Parkinson's, a lot of times there is pain and stiffness that does not show up on imaging. So when it's your nervous system, there isn't really a way to measure that with any type of image. Even an MRI shows soft tissue. So it shows if there was like a tear in the muscle or if there's tendonitis or things like that. But it doesn't show if you have pain that is more from Parkinson's, which Parkinson's can cause pain directly. And it also can cause pain indirectly. So some people just really experience pain, and it's kind of a primary symptom of their Parkinson's. And in many cases, medication is helpful to some degree, but just like there can be ons and offs with other symptoms, there could be on off with pain. So medication could be helpful, but then it wears off and it's more painful, and that could go back and forth. Parkinson's can also cause pain indirectly in the stiffness, like in rigidity, that symptom. If your muscles are really rigid around a joint, they kind of compress the joint, and then you can't move as well. And then it can be painful. So for you, it seems to me like you already did a little more than what I would actually suggest. So to do 30 minutes on the bike when you hadn't been doing it, 30 minutes is a long time. So what I would recommend for you is, do you think you could walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes?
oh yeah,
Okay. And could you ride the bike for 5 minutes?
oh yeah, probably longer.
So
Of course,
that's the thing. So I would
I
do,
know it's what I always do. I go, oh, I can do this, and then
Mhm.
I do it, and then I shut down for another 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Uh,
So that is what we are really trying to avoid. So I want you to do less than what you are capable of doing, because the goal is for you to be able to do it with very minimal pain. It may not be 100% pain free, but with minimal pain during and afterwards. And then we're going to slowly work our way up over the time so that you're not doing this, 30 minutes of exercise, I'm in more pain, then having to take days off or weeks off and then overdoing it
mhm.
again. We don't want to do that. So what I would recommend is that you do 5 minutes on the treadmill and 5 minutes on the bike. They could happen back to back if that's okay or feels better, or it could happen more separate, and go at whatever pace feels comfortable. We don't care right now about cardio, because trying to push it to a cardio level is causing you to have more pain and then not be able to exercise. So that's not helpful. So right now, it's just about moving. We're just trying to get you to a point where you can move consistently with less pain. And we will be able to work your way up to a cardio level over time. I feel very confident in that, but we have to go slowly so that your body gets a chance to adapt to the exercise that you're doing. And the other thing I would do, are there any stretches or power moves that help you feel better or looser before, oh, hang on one second. So are there any exercise or stretches you can do before or after exercise that help you feel better? Something like a power move, power moves or anything.
I think power moves that don't involve my hip, uh, if I'm sitting with my legs kind of straddled real wide on the floor and doing, oh, that's really not comfortable at all. But just kind of basic, anything in the chair is usually pretty good. I don't put my feet as wide apart as I used to when I first started doing power moves, because it seems like it's irritating. And I- I've been doing so good for so many years, I didn't realize pain was a symptom of Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll get mixed information when you talk to doctors about it, but there are published studies saying that pain is a symptom of Parkinson's. Not everyone has it, just like all the symptoms of Parkinson's. It's different for different people, what symptoms they experience and to what degree. But it absolutely can be a symptom of Parkinson's. So when it comes to power moves, I'd say kind of the same thing as with the cardio. So power moves really should be helpful. And when you say, you know, this is harder than it used to be, like, again, I think power moves are very Parkinson specific exercises. So when we say, you know, bring your legs wider apart and you're like, oh, that's uncomfortable, it's because you really are pushing directly back on Parkinson's. Parkinson's is saying, you know, move small, be stiff, and you're trying to move bigger and be less stiff. And that's like, that's what power moves are. We're trying to directly counteract the symptoms of Parkinson's, but you have to do it in the way that works for you. So yes, the goal is to bring your feet apart in a position, you know, feet and knees apart in a position where you feel some stretching. There might be mild discomfort, but there should not be pain. So yeah, don't go so wide that it's painful. You might also need to modify the number of repetitions you do. Doing 10 to 20 repetitions might not be right for you now. But if you could commit to doing power moves, are you, before I finish saying that, is there any form of exercise, like what are you doing right now on a daily basis with exercise? Is there anything that you have been able to do?
I have a bad attitude. So I don't do anything on a regular basis. Although I have an old house and I have a lot of stairs, so I go up and down stairs, and but I haven't been doing anything on a regular basis. Uh, Although Wednesday I have my line dance class, but even the last time I did that, I had a lot of hip pain, which, that's my favorite form of exercise is line dancing. And I haven't experienced much pain except the last time I went.
Mhm.
So I don't know if
Sorry to
that
hear that. Yes,
that
that
kind of
doesn't.
I'm admitting that I'm not doing what I should be doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that because, in a way, because to me, that means like you are pure potential right now. If you were already doing like all the right things and you were still having so much challenge, that would be a little bit harder. But if you're saying, yeah, you know, it's been hard because I mean, it's not fun to have pain and for exercise and the things that you used to do and want to do for that to be so hard, it's very discouraging. That is a totally normal experience to be having. And that is what we are here for, is to help you feel confident that if you start doing the things that it is going to work and you're going to feel better and it will pay off. But it's very, very important to do the right amount that your body can handle. It is very easy to overdo it. So what I would recommend for you, like maybe for the rest of September, is to try to do some power moves each day. And you use mostly recordings, right? Based on timing of exercise.
Yes, except that new class. Uh, I can't remember the name of it, but
Stretch and flow.
yes, I've been doing that one live.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I mean, anytime that a live class works, that's great. But otherwise, with recordings, the nice thing about recordings is you can do it anytime. It doesn't have to match up with the schedule. What I would recommend is that ideally, almost every day, whenever possible, you do 5 minutes on the treadmill, 5 minutes on the
Mhm.
bike, and you do about 30 minutes of power moves. And so you can do the 30-minute power moves classes, or you can do the longer classes, but just do 30 minutes of it. Um, you know, and all of them do it in a way that feels okay. But I really think that getting into the different positions is very important for feeling better. So getting down on the floor, if something
Mhm.
hurts, modify or skip it for now. But I think doing 30-minute classes might be the best. If you need to go a little slower or take rest breaks as you get started, that is totally fine. You don't have to do the whole thing, but get started with it. And sometimes what works really well is if you pick a 30-minute class and you do that one, like for the whole week, that's the one that you're going to do every day, because then you get familiar with it. And if there are certain things that you need to modify or skip, you kind of know, but you also
Yeah.
might feel that you get better throughout the week. You might notice, okay, when I do kind of the same thing and I know what to expect, my brain knows what to expect, my body knows a little bit more what to expect, that it actually gets easier to do throughout the week. So that's
I
what I would.
appreciate, I'm sorry, I appreciate last time you mentioned that I could slow the video down, and I didn't
Mhm.
know that. And so it'll probably end up being 45 minutes, but I think I need to go at a little slower pace because I have a sore shoulder too. Just this last year, I just feel like I'm falling apart.
Yeah.
And it's
And
so frustrating.
I do think it's partially the challenge with medications that it sounds like, you are someone who's sensitive and has experienced some side effects. So you're really minimizing meds, which, is totally up to you kind of how you do that. But I do think that's part of what's going on is that your dopamine is pretty low. And I still think it's really worth reading. Like, do you have Dr. Alscog's book, the new Parkinson's disease treatment book? I think
Yeah.
reviewing that and reading the chapters on getting started with carbidopa levodopa treatment and the early years on carbidopa levodopa. You don't have to read the whole book, but those 2 chapters I think would be enlightening in trying to figure out, how to be able to tolerate and take some medication, because I do really think it would support you in feeling better, but it's just a matter of what's the right dose and the right interval and the right timing. And the more that you understand and can figure that out, then you don't have to rely on your neurologist who may not totally understand what's going on for you. So I think the medication thing is important. And then I think the exercise and getting started with less than what you might be capable of doing, but in a way where you feel good during and afterwards, but being very consistent with it will allow you to increase over time. And I think that if you could, do less than what you think you should be able to do for a few weeks, you will get much closer to being able to do what you think you should be able to do and actually start feeling good doing it again.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. I've got I don't know if you can see this. I've got these filled out and I've got it marked with how many days till the wedding. I'm sorry, I'm a
It's
big
okay.
sap.
Yeah. It's really a totally appropriate emotion to have with what you're experiencing.
I totally get where you're coming from. But I think you're going to close down that dance floor. I just don't see any reason. I just have every confidence in you. I,
Thank you.
I'm really, are you a list person? Do you respond well to lists?
I do make lists.
Okay, I love lists. I'm very weird that way. But if you made, like, to me, to be motivated, I need to write down what I'm going to do and I'm going to check it off. And I think sounds like you are an overachiever. If Claire tells you how long to do 5 minutes, 5 minutes, like how many days to do it, if she told me, I think I could write it 15 times and then just check it off. And I'd feel like, because I think I'm obedient that way, not when left to my own devices, but when I think there's any chance of, following the rules, I need to check off boxes. And the only other thing I'd encourage, not like I know all these answers, but, and I'm in the East, so live classes are not always convenient for me, but I try to structure my day around them because I feel like there's a community there kind of saying, like, Linda, where were you last week? In the nicest way possible. They're worried about me. So I personally respond super well to live classes, where if it's a taped class, feel like I just cheat
Yes,
on taped classes where I
I
look over and I go,
understand.
look at what Billy's doing. Look at what Linda's doing. If they can do it, I'm going to do it. So there's this weird thing going on, but I feel like for my personality, live classes and lists are kind of the way to go.
I appreciate that. I'll
Yeah.
I'll write it down on the notes I'm taking.
And I would write, Gay, like if you're printing out our, weekly checklist thing where it says cardio, I mean, I would cross out the other text and write 5 minutes of treadmill, 5 minutes of bike, like write down what is right for you now so that, cross it out, because trying to do high intensity or go for 30 to 40 minutes, that is not the right thing for you right now. It's going to be the right thing again in the future. I am confident in that, but we have to start with the right amount and work our way slowly up over time. I think with the live classes too, Linda, what helps is, to be able to share, to come in and say, I've done 5 minutes of each 3 days in a row and it didn't increase my pain. Yay, that is what we're going for, and then we're able to go up from there. So I would say that that's the goal basically for a week, is to do 5 minutes on the treadmill, 5 minutes on the bike, 30-ish minutes of power moves. That could be a 30-minute class slowed down to 0.75%. It could even be a 15-minute class slowed down. It's not about doing a lot. And if if it does work to join live classes in your schedule, then you could say, I'm going to join the live class, but I'm just going to do 20 or 30 minutes of it. That is totally fine. So yeah, do less, be more consistent, but do less when you do it than what you think you can do. And being consistent with that, then we can check in next week and see how it's going. And it might be time to bump up, or it might be time to do that for a little bit longer. You know, we have to just kind of see how your body responds to that and then continue from there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You are welcome. Yeah. But I've seen it happen over and over and over, where when people do the right amount and we're able to exercise without pain, that they are able to increase over time. It's just an excruciating process that I think most of us don't feel like, you know, doing 5 minutes, like what's the point of doing 5 minutes? That's nothing. Actually, it is not nothing. It is significant. And going from 5 minutes to then maybe 8 minutes and slowly working your way up over time, you will get to 30 minutes where it actually feels good to do 30 minutes.
Well, I appreciate that permission to not push myself so hard right off the bat. That's kind of what I need, is somebody to say, you don't have to do all that.
Yeah, this coaching can go both ways. I mean, in a lot of cases, we're trying to help people do more, but there's plenty of people where we're telling them, hey, you actually need to do less to start with so that you can work your way up and be ready to do more at some point in time.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else who's on the call have a question about what they're doing or adding something or a comment?
I just so I guess I'm wondering, could this be kind of like, I don't know if people are starting it for the month of September and this is their month or not. I managed to get a pretty crappy virus and I feel not so well. And then on the 20th, we're going to England and Wales for a couple weeks. So I don't have 5 weeks. So I don't know whether do I like start it as soon as I'm feeling decent and try it out a few times, or do I wait and hit it for a month straight? I think you're going to say try it out, but I don't know. I don't
Great
know.
question. Well, I would say first, if you already had a virus or are feeling crummy, I would say the first step is just to try to get back to what your kind of typical exercise routine is. So I'd say that's the first step, is try to get back to that and see how you feel. And then I would say thinking about your trip where you're going to be gone for a few weeks, setting yourself up for success on your trip where you're probably going to be active. There's probably going to be lots of walking on certain days, but also, you know, trying to keep up with some mobility and like power moves exercises. So I would say downloading some of our classes. And I just made a new package. So for anyone who hasn't heard about it before, our classes online are streaming. That's how they're available most of the time. And when you're at home and you have internet, that's fine. When you're traveling, you may have internet, but a lot of times hotel internet is slow and you can't actually stream a class. Even if you do have internet access, it's slow. Or if you're somewhere like you're going international and you maybe don't have data, or you don't know what the internet situation is going to be, or people who go on cruises, the internet is also very slow on cruises in my experience. So we have packages that are for travel on our website that you can download onto your device, so you don't need internet to watch them. So if you had an iPad, or a phone, you know, a phone is pretty small, but if you downloaded a Power Moves class that you've done before and you don't have to see everything because it's kind of familiar, that would be fine. So we have multiple packages that are available for download, some that are like mixed of different types of classes. And then recently I made one that is just Power Moves, because Power Moves is the most accessible. You don't need any special equipment really to do Power Moves when you're traveling. You're almost always going to have access to a chair or an ottoman or a bed that you could sit on to do the seated exercises, then standing, and then floor exercises could be done on a bed or on a floor with a towel or yoga mat with a cushion under your knees. So most places that you go, you probably can do Power Moves and you don't need anything real special. I have 15, 30, and 60-minute classes in there as well. Sometimes when you're traveling, it might really be 15 or 30 minutes that you have time for, not a whole hour. So Linda, I would kind of think about your trip and I would download some Power Moves classes in advance, so that you could, not every day, but if those can be fit in a little bit to keep you as mobile as possible and feeling good, then you'll feel hopefully good during your trip. And then when you come back from your trip, depending on how active you were able to be, I would still say, okay, you really should give yourself a week or two to just get back to what your normal exercise routine is. And then I would say to try the intensive. And the intensive was 4 weeks. If you just feel like, okay, I can't really see in the future if I get back from my trip and then it's November and then it starts to be the holidays, I don't really see a time where I have 4 weeks that I can block off, then I would say, yeah, try it for a week. Try the intensive for a week and see how you feel. And it may just realistically be next year. I mean, in this research study, if people were committing to go to this place in Italy for a month, they didn't just go and do that. You know, they looked at their schedule and the clinic looked at their schedule. And sometimes that probably was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months away from the current date. So it could be that you say, like, I've got this awesome trip coming up. I want to have just the best time possible for that. Then, then it's busy with the holidays. So a time frame that really, and then January is like, well, it's the beginning of the year and lots happen then. Maybe it's February that is the right month. So if you do want to really try to do it for a month, I'd say you just have to be realistic about when is there, time and space in my life that I would be able to make that commitment. And then in the meantime, you could say, I'm going to try to do a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry about doing 3 hours a day, multiple days a week for a specific period of time. I'm going to be as consistent as possible with my regular routine. I'm going to try doing a little bit more on some days. And then I'm going to see if I can figure out a month to really see if I can dedicate to do this intensive.
So, two things. One is way back in the early days, we had to ask for the download, but now do we still ask or do we just sign in and there's a way to download it?
No, it still is. Yeah, it's something that I have to basically give you access to that package because
Okay.
otherwise packages are for purchase, but you do not have to spend any money on it. But I do have to give you access to it.
Okay.
Rogue has to pay I think it's maybe $1 to give that access. So we are happy to do that. But I'm not just going to give it to everyone because I don't want to, if people aren't going to use it, I don't want to spend $1 because that adds up.
No, that
So
makes
yeah, it is something that if you're going to have a trip, and it could be now, Linda, it doesn't have to be right before you trip. You say, I'm going to be traveling. I know I'm going to want to download these. Hey, will you give me access? Yes. I want the, what's it called? Just the power moves, or I think I might, in our hotels have access and I might go do some cardio. So I'd actually like the variety pack. So you could tell me, and then basically add your email. You get an email saying you have access. And then you go in and you download those. You can pick what classes you download. So you could download just one and use the same one the whole time you're there. You could download a few or a couple different time lengths. And then you download them and you'll have them on that device. So can be a phone, tablet, or like a laptop computer. Could be, if you're traveling with people, if you don't have one of those things, but your spouse or kids or friends or family does, and you could borrow their iPad for a period of time, you could download it wherever.
And then I only just got sick right before the weekend, but before that, after you had talked about the new book that's out by Dorsey and Oken, or however you say his name, and the 7,000 steps really resounded with me. So I put it on my watch, and it's intentional to get in those 7,000 steps,
Mm-hmm.
but doable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I think about it, I can do it, or if I plan ahead, and that's been kind of cool to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to steps, it takes intention, but the goal is within reach. It's really easy to not get that many steps though. Like even for me at work, I have a pretty active job, but it also sometimes is more standing than actually moving, but it's very easy to not get that many steps. And for anyone who didn't see, I'm trying to find the post. So Dr. Michael Oken is a movement disorders neurologist at the University of Florida. He is world renowned in the treatment and research of people who have Parkinson's. He's a really wonderful person, and he posts a lot on social media. I think Instagram is where he posts the most. It may also go to Threads or Facebook. It's hard to keep track of it all, but Instagram I think is the best place to be to see it. Facebook has too much trash now. I'm not a fan of Facebook anymore. It used to be cool. It's not great anymore. There's too much other stuff. So he posts great updates on research and then what his take is on it. And I'm trying to find where his post on the steps was. And he posts a lot.
But Claire, you're right, because even on days where I babysit my grandchildren, and I'm so exhausted at the end of the day, I hardly have 1,000 steps. I mean, I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought I would have had 15,000 and I don't have that many. So I have to, it's intentionally taking a walk for me that does it. Unfortunately, I
Mm-hmm.
have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, which really helps. Is this the one? No. Light therapy. Nope. Ugh, thought I saved it. Here we go. Is this one it? Lancet. Yes. Daily steps and health outcomes. Okay. So there was a recent publication in the Lancet, and it's called Daily Steps and Health Outcomes in Adults, a Systematic Review and Dose Response Meta-Analysis. And so Michael Oken, what he wrote is why 7,000 steps is the right number for Parkinson's and beyond. What do I tell the folks in my clinic? The 3 Ds: death, dementia, and depression. For years, people have asked me how many steps they should aim for each day. New evidence offers us a refined answer: 7,000 steps or their equivalent is enough to drive real health benefits. Ding Nguyen and colleagues nail it in their meta-analysis just published in Lancet. Key points: 7,000 steps per day is linked to a 47% lower risk of death, 25% lower risk of cardiovascular disease, 37% lower cancer mortality, 38% lower dementia risk, and 22% lower depression risk. Health benefits keep improving with more steps. However, the biggest bang for your buck comes between 5 and 7,000 steps per day. Even modest step counts matter. Going from 2,000 to 4,000 steps reduces mortality risk by over 1/3. And then his take: think about the 3 Ds for achieving meaningful benefits in Parkinson's and beyond: death, dementia, and depression. I tell folks in my clinic to shoot for 3 to 4 20-minute walks and to take a friend, especially if there are any balance issues. If they can't walk, I encourage 1 to 1.5 hours of indoor recumbent biking a day that is performed in 10 to 20-minute intervals spread out over the course of the waking day. Here are 5 points that resonated with me about this article. Every step counts, and small increases make a big difference. 7,000 steps a day is realistic and achievable for many, including those living with Parkinson's. Steps do not need to be consecutive. Accumulated movement throughout the day matters. Beyond 7,000 steps, benefits continue. However, the gains become smaller. Movement is medicine. A daily walking habit is one of the most powerful tools we have to fight Parkinson's and other chronic diseases. Do you have an exercise plan? So that could be a goal. A goal could be that you're going to start measuring your step count. And so you need a way to do that. A watch. You can do it with your phone, but then it usually means your phone has to be on you all the time to get accurate measurement. You could get a Fitbit or something else that tracks movement throughout the day and kind of see where you're at first, and then start to work towards increasing activity levels. 7,000 steps per day. My experience is that like you get about 1,000 steps in like 10 minutes of walking. So if you go for a 10-minute walk, you get about 1,000 steps. Depends on your speed. You know, there's some other variables that matter a little bit, but approximately. So, I mean, even if you got up and walked around your house and walked laps within your house, but you did it for 10 minutes, you're probably going to get that many steps. And ideally you move, you know, take nice big steps and everything. But yeah, going out for shorter walks, doing something in the morning, later at night, or of course you can go, you know, for a longer walk during the day. That's great. If you're up and moving some throughout the day, it's not like you need to walk for 70 minutes, right? You get all 7,000 steps right then, but you're going to get other steps throughout the day. So if you go for 20, 30, 40-minute walks, you're going to get a good chunk of those steps in, and then moving around your house the rest of the day, you'd get them. But yeah, having a research-based number is helpful. 10,000 steps a day. My understanding is there wasn't really research that backed that up. It was kind of like, you know, steps are good and this is a nice round number and easy to kind of think about. And then it was kind of a marketing thing, I think, but there wasn't really research. But the 7,000 steps per day is research that less than that versus more than that, there is a significant difference in multiple health outcomes. So that'd be a great thing to think about as well. All right. Well, is there anything in particular that anyone would like to make sure that we talk about next week, or anything that I should prepare for? I'm going to ask everyone next week who's able to make it to come with a win. So have something that you're kind of ready to share, either in the chat or verbally, ideally. That is, you know, I set a goal and I did this, or I was able to do this without pain, or, you know, I read a chapter in this book and I have much more clarity about trying to get optimized on my medication. I was able to follow through and do intentional movement for periods of time throughout the day. So there's so many things, but try to have a win ready to share because that's important and it's fun to celebrate those things. Next is then to think about setting a goal. So think about having something specific, whether it is I'm going to try this intensive for this period of time, or I'm going to do 5 minutes on the treadmill and 5 minutes on the bike almost every day for the next 7 days so that you can report back to us. Having a specific goal, whether it's short or long term, is really helpful. And I will work on talking to Leanne about just getting a list kind of OT type things to brainstorm. And then we'll meet back here next week, same time, same place.
Thank you, Claire.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Good luck, everyone. And feel free, if you have any questions or ever want to share a win or anything, feel free to send me an email and respond to the daily email as well. And for anyone who tried to vote for book club, I'm sorry that the link was incorrect. The correct link will be in the email tomorrow. It's so annoying. There's so many like details in those emails. So it's basically just my fault. I put, linked the wrong hyperlink because since we didn't have class last Monday because it was Labor Day, I hadn't like updated the template for the daily email with like the new monthly schedule and stuff. So that's what I was doing in there. And I went to Catherine's email to her link. I clicked on it. I made sure it worked. I copied that link. I have no idea what happened between me copying that link and thinking that I was inserting it in the correct place, but my bad. And the correct link will be there tomorrow to vote on the book. But I didn't want to send like you guys an additional, I was already sending a lot of emails. So I try not to send any more. So that will be fixed for tomorrow.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
You're
Claire,
welcome.
thank
Have a
you.
great day. See you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.